I dropped my husband off at the airport, truly believing it was just another business trip. But just as I was about to leave, my 6-year-old son squeezed my hand tight and whispered, "Mama, don't go back home. This morning, I heard Daddy planning something really bad against us. Please believe me this time." I did believe him, and we hid, and what I saw next made me spiral into a panic. But before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching this video from. We love knowing how far our stories are reaching. The fluorescent lights of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport were burning my eyes that Thursday night. I was exhausted. The kind of deep, bone-weary fatigue that settles in your soul. You know, it wasn't just sleepiness. It was an exhaustion of the spirit that I'd been dragging around for months, without ever truly grasping the reason why my husband, Quasi, stood beside me with that perfect, public-facing smile he always wore. Impeccable gray custom suit, leather briefcase in hand, the expensive cologne I'd gifted him for his last birthday lingering in the air. To anyone in that terminal, we were the definition of black excellence. The power couple, he, the successful executive, me, the dedicated wife, sending him off before a major business trip to Chicago if only they knew the truth. By my side, his sweaty little hand, holding mine firmly, was Kenzo, my 6-year-old son. My entire world. He was too still that night, quieter than usual. Kenzo has always been an observant child, one of those kids who prefers watching to participating. But that night, there was something undeniably different in his eyes. A fear I couldn't quite name. "This meeting in Chicago is crucial, babe," Quasi said, pulling me in for a calculated hug. Everything about him was calculated. I just hadn't figured it out yet. 3 days tops and I'm back. You hold down the fort here, right? Hold down the fort? As if my sole existence was merely to hold everything together while he constructed his empire. Yet I smiled. I smiled like I always did, because that was the expectation. "Of course, we'll be absolutely fine," I replied, feeling Kenzo squeeze my hand even tighter, a warning I failed to heed. Quasi crouched down in front of our son. He placed both hands on Kenzo's shoulders in that studied way he always used when he wanted to appear the perfect, devoted father. "And you, little man, you take care of Mama for me, all right?" Kenzo didn't answer. He just nodded, his eyes locked on his father's face. That look, it was as if he were meticulously memorizing every detail, every feature, as if he were seeing Quasi for the very last time. I should have noticed. I should have felt that gut punch of something being profoundly wrong right then and there. But we never spot the warning signs when they come from the people we love, do we? We believe we know the person. We think that after 8 years of marriage, nothing can truly surprise us. How devastatingly naive I was. Quasi kissed Kenzo's forehead, then mine. "Love you both. See you soon." And then he turned, grabbed his carry-on bag, and walked purposefully toward the TSA checkpoint. Kenzo and I stood there, frozen in the middle of that crowd of goodbyes and reunions, watching him disappear into the stream. When I finally couldn't see Quasi anymore, I took a deep, shaky breath. "Come on, baby. Let's go home." My voice came out weary. I just wanted to get back to our house in Buckhead, kick off these uncomfortable heels I'd worn to play the part, and maybe watch something mindless on TV, until sleep finally took over. We started walking down the long airport concourse, our steps echoing emptily on the polished floor. Kenzo was even quieter now, and through the hand holding mine, I could feel the palpable tension coiled in his small body. "Everything okay, sweetie? You're very quiet today." He didn't answer immediately. We kept moving, passing the closed shops, the glowing flight monitors, and people rushing past with rolling suitcases. It was only when we neared the exit, with the automatic glass doors already in sight, that he slammed to a halt. He stopped so abruptly, I almost tripped over him. "Kenzo, what's wrong?" That's when he looked up at me. And God, I will never forget that look. It was pure, unadulterated terror. The kind of primal fear a 6-year-old shouldn't even know exists. "Mama," he whispered, his voice trembling. "We can't go back home." My heart did a strange, sickening flip in my chest. I crouched down in front of him, gripping his little arms. "What do you mean, baby?" "Of course we're going home. It's late. You need to sleep, don't you?" His voice came out louder, a desperate, frantic sound. A few people turned their heads to stare at us. He swallowed hard and continued, now in an urgent whisper. "Mama, please. We can't go back. Believe me this time, please." This time. Those 2 words hit me hard, because it was true. Weeks ago, Kenzo had told me he saw a strange, dark car parked in front of our house. The same car, 3 nights in a row. I dismissed it as a coincidence. Days later, he swore he heard Daddy talking quietly in his home office about solving the problem once and for all. I told him it was just business stuff, that he shouldn't eavesdrop on grown-up conversations. I didn't believe him, and now he was begging me, tears starting to form in those deep brown eyes. This time I believe you, Kenzo. Explain to me what's going on. My voice came out far steadier than I felt inside. He glanced around nervously, as if afraid someone might overhear. Then he tugged on my arm, forcing me to lean in even closer, and whispered in my ear. This morning, really early, I woke up before everyone else. I went to get water, and I heard Daddy in his office. He was on the phone. Mama, he said that tonight when we were sleeping, something bad was going to happen. That he needed to be far away when it happened. That we weren't going to be in his way anymore. My blood ran instantly cold. Kenzo, are you absolutely sure? Are you certain about what you heard? He nodded desperately. He said there were people who were going to take care of it. He said he was finally going to be free. Mama, his voice. It wasn't Daddy's voice. It was different. Scary. My first instinct was to completely deny it. To say it was his imagination. That he had misunderstood. That Quasi would never. But then I started to remember. Little things I had willfully ignored. Quasi increasing his life insurance policy 3 months ago, saying it was just a precaution for generational wealth. Quasi insisting that I put everything, the house in Buckhead, the car, even our joint savings account, solely in his name. It helps with taxes, babe. Quasi getting intensely angry when I mentioned I wanted to go back to work. It's not necessary, Era. I handle everything. The strange coded calls he answered, locked away in his office, the increasingly frequent trips, and that low, chilling conversation I accidentally overheard 2 weeks ago when I thought he was asleep. He was murmuring into the phone, "Yeah, I know the risk, but there's no other way. It has to look accidental." At that moment, when I first overheard him murmuring that line, I had convinced myself it was about work, some risky business merger or investment. But what if it wasn't? What if it was about us? I looked at Kenzo, at that tiny, terrified face, the rolling tears, the trembling hands, and I made the most terrifying and important decision of my life. Okay, son, I believe you. The instant relief that washed over his face was profound, but heartbreakingly short-lived. So, what are we going to do? He asked, his voice still shaky. Good question. My brain was racing at a blinding speed. If Kenzo was right, and every cell in my body was starting to scream that he was, going back home was a death sentence. But where could we go? Whose house was safe? All our friends were Quasi's friends too. Part of the same insulated social circle. My family lived across the country in North Carolina. And what if I was wrong? What if this was all a terrible, unforgivable misunderstanding? But what if it wasn't? Let's go to the car, I decided, trying to sound calm. But we are not going inside the house. We're going to watch from a distance, just to be sure. Okay, Kenzo nodded instantly. I took his hand again, and we walked swiftly toward the parking deck. My heart was beating so aggressively, I could hear the blood pulsing in my ears. Every step felt like it weighed a ton. The cool night air hit me as we stepped out of the covered structure. The parking deck was dimly lit, with only a few scattered cars. Ours was tucked away in a corner. A silver SUV that Quasi had insisted on buying last year. A safe car for my family, he'd said. Safe. What a bitter, cruel joke. We got in. I buckled Kenzo in, then myself. My hands were shaking so violently, it took me 3 tries just to insert the key and start the ignition. Mama! Kenzo's voice was small and muffled from the back seat. Yes, baby. Thank you for believing me. He was curled up in the seat, clutching the dinosaur backpack he took everywhere. I'm always going to believe you, son. Always. And in that moment, I realized I should have said that sooner. I should have listened to him from the very start. I drove in silence. I didn't head straight to our driveway. Instead, I took a long, circuitous back route through the winding neighborhood streets, finding a spot on a parallel road that offered a direct view of our house through the dense trees, but kept us obscured. I parked in a deep, dark spot between 2 large oak trees. From here, we could see our home, Everything looked perfectly, unnervingly normal. The streetlights illuminated the sidewalk, our manicured lawn, the front porch where Quasi and I drank coffee on Sundays, the window of Kenzo's room with the superhero curtains he had picked out. Home. Or at least, that's what I thought it was. I turned off the engine and the lights. Total darkness. Total silence, except for our shallow breathing. And now we wait, I whispered into the quiet. Kenzo didn't respond. He just kept staring out the window, his eyes fixed on the illuminated house. And so we waited, not knowing that in less than an hour, everything I thought I knew about my life was going to utterly crumble. The dashboard clock glowed 10:17 p.m. I began to question if I wasn't being completely ridiculous. There I was, hiding on a dark street with my 6-year-old, spying on my own multi-million-dollar house, like we were characters in a bad B-movie thriller. What kind of mother does this? What kind of wife suspects her own husband? Of what exactly? I couldn't even form the complete, coherent thought in my head. It was too absurd. Quasi never raised a hand to me, never yelled at Kenzo. He was a present father, a brilliant provider. Kenzo finally slept beside me, completely at peace after days of terror. At least one of us could rest. At 9:30 the next morning, we were in position. I sat on a bench in Centennial Olympic Park, wearing a jacket with a built-in wire. Kenzo was safe in Zunara's office, watching everything through a discreet feed the police had set up. Detective Hightower and his team were scattered around the park, perfectly disguised as tourists, hot dog vendors, and people walking their dogs. And then I saw Quasi. He showed up promptly at 10 a.m. He wore wrinkled clothes, probably the same ones from yesterday, with deep dark circles under his eyes, his beard unshaven. For the first time since I met him, he looked genuinely human, vulnerable. But I knew the horrifying truth lurking beneath the surface. He saw me and practically ran over. "Ayira, thank God you're okay!" He tried to pull me into a hug. I held up my hand, stopping him cold. "Don't touch me." The mask slipped for a second. I saw raw rage flicker in his eyes before he hastily reverted to expressing concern. "Babe, I know you're scared, but you have to listen to me." "Listen to you," I repeated, keeping my voice steady and level for the wire. "Listen to you say what, Quasi? That it was all a mistake? That the men who burned our house with our keys were just opportunistic burglars?" He blinked, calculating rapidly. You saw?" "I saw everything. I was there. Kenzo and I saw everything." He went completely pale. He looked around nervously, finally realizing the vulnerability of a public park. "Not here. Let's go somewhere private." "I'm not going anywhere with you," I said firmly, though my heart was hammering against the wire. "Talk here now. Why did you try to kill me?" "I didn't. It wasn't like that." He ran a trembling hand through his hair. "Ayira, don't you understand? I'm in trouble. I owe a lot of money to very dangerous people." "And those people threatened you? They threatened Kenzo? So you decided to kill us instead? What kind of logic is that?" "No, I was going to get you out of the country," he burst out, his voice cracking. "With the insurance money, we could start over somewhere else, far from those guys. It was for us." The lie was so blatant, so poorly constructed, I almost laughed. "You're talking about the insurance that only pays out if I die." He froze. He realized the fatal mistake he had just confessed. "Ayira." He instantly changed tactics. His voice became sharp, threatening. "You took things from my safe. I need you to give them back now. The black notebook, the evidence that you planned everything. You don't understand what you're doing. If you give that to the police, I go down. And if I go down, the guys I owe will come after you. Either way, you're not safe. But at least it won't be you trying to kill me." The rage finally exploded. The facade shattered entirely. "You were always so naive," he hissed, leaning in, his handsome face contorted. "You think I married you? Why? For love? You were just a spoiled girl with daddy's money. It was only ever for that." It hurt. Even knowing it was true from Zunara's files, it hurt to hear it delivered with such malice. And Kenzo, our son, was he also just for interest? The brat! He spat the words out. He was always weird, too quiet, watching everything. Freak kid. And there was the true hate. It wasn't just for money. He truly despised us. That's when I heard Detective Hightower's voice, calm and clear, buzzing in my ear. We have enough. Move in, team. Suddenly, the tourists stood up. The hot dog vendors abandoned their carts. Everyone converged on Quasi with badges in hand. Quasi Vance, you are under arrest. His face went through 5 raw emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, confusion, blinding rage, profound fear, and finally, acceptance. He had lost the game. But before they could cuff him, he did something no one expected. He ran. He sprinted through the park, knocking people over, jumping benches. The police went after him, but he had a head start and was running directly in my direction. I didn't have time to react. He grabbed me, pulled something from his waistband, a knife, and pressed the cold steel against my throat. "Nobody moves!" he screamed, his voice unrecognizable, raw with cornered panic. "Or I kill her! I swear I'll kill her!" Detective Hightower stopped 10 feet away, hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "Calm down, Quasi. You don't have to do this." "Of course I do. She ruined everything. Everything!" The blade pressed harder. I felt a trickle of warm blood run down my neck. My brain seized with primal terror. But then I remembered Kenzo, my son, potentially watching this moment unfold on a screen. I couldn't let him see me die. "Quasi," I said, trying to keep my voice low and steady, projecting a calmness I didn't possess. "You're not going to do this." "Don't tell me what I am or am not going to do." "You're not going to do it because you're a coward," I countered, turning my head slightly to look him directly in his frantic eyes. "You always have been. Cowards don't kill while looking someone in the eye. They hire other people. And even at that, you failed." The knife trembled in his hand. And in that second of hesitation, that tiny fraction of self-doubt I had managed to provoke, something happened. A shot. Not a killing shot, but a highly accurate, precise shot to incapacitate. A sniper I hadn't even seen hit Quasi's hand. The knife clattered onto the pavement. He screamed in pure agony. In seconds, he was on the ground, pinned down, handcuffed, and surrounded by officers. I fell to my knees, shaking uncontrollably. Detective Hightower helped me up. "It's okay. It's over." But it didn't feel over. Nothing felt real. I watched Quasi being dragged to the squad car. He was screaming, kicking, threatening. "This doesn't end here, Ayura. You're going to pay. You're going to pay." Empty. All his threats were empty now. Quasi's trial was fast. With all the evidence, the black notebook, the burner phones, the recordings of our meeting, the testimony of the men he hired, who cut a plea deal, there was no defense. They tried to plead temporary insanity, tried to claim he was coerced by the loan sharks, tried everything. It didn't work. Quasi was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison for attempted murder, arson, insurance fraud, and conspiracy. The list was long. I didn't go to the sentencing. I never wanted to see his face again. But Zunara went. She sent me a text when the verdict came down. "Justice is served." Justice. The word felt strange because it didn't seem fair that 8 years of my life had been a lie. It didn't seem fair that my son had to grow up knowing his own father wanted to kill him. But at least we were alive and free. In the following months, I had to rebuild literally everything: documents, identity, bank accounts, and a home. I eventually got access to the home insurance money. Ironic, since Quasi had burned it to get a different insurance payout. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to start over. Zunara helped me with all the paperwork. More than that, she became a friend. Maybe the first true friend I ever had. "Your father knew I was going to need you one day," I told her one afternoon, drinking tea in the new apartment I rented in Decatur. "How did he know about Quasi?" "A father's intuition," she smiled gently. "Or maybe he just saw things that you, being in love, didn't want to see. Little signs. The way Quasi looked at your family's money. How he constantly asked about inheritances. How irritated he got when you talked about working. She was right. The signs were always there. I was the one who chose to ignore them. My hero Kenzo began therapy. At first, he didn't want to talk about what happened, but over time, slowly, he began to open up. The therapist called him resilient. Children are stronger than we imagine. But even strong, he had nightmares. He woke up screaming, saying there was fire, that he couldn't get out, that his daddy was coming. On those nights, I stayed with him, held him tight, and hummed the gospel songs I sang to him when he was a baby, and slowly he would drift back to sleep. Mama, he asked me one night, a few months after the trial, do you still love Daddy? The question caught me off guard. Why do you ask that? Because he was bad, really bad. But he's still my daddy, and I don't know if it's wrong to miss him sometimes. My heart broke for him. I pulled him into a tight hug. It's not wrong, baby. He is your dad. And the part of him you knew, the part that played catch with you, that took you to the park, that part felt real. Or at least you believed it was. And there's no problem missing that. But he tried to hurt us. He tried, I affirmed. And that was horrible and unforgivable. But your feelings are yours. You can miss the dad you thought you had and still be angry about what he did. Both things can exist. Together. He stayed quiet for a while, then whispered, I saved you, right, Mama? You saved us, I told him, looking into his eyes. You saved me, and you saved yourself. You are my hero, Kenzo. He smiled. A small, genuine smile. And in that moment, watching my son, my protector, I knew, absolutely, that we were going to be okay. But was he a loving husband? The question emerged from nowhere, striking me cold. When was the last time he looked at me with genuine affection? When did he ask how my day was, and actually want to hear the answer? When did he touch me, without it feeling mechanical, automatic? When was the last time I felt loved and not just maintained? Mama, look! Kenzo's voice, small and urgent, ripped me out of my spiraling thoughts. My heart spiked instantly. What? What did you see? That car. I followed the direction of his tiny, trembling finger. A vehicle was turning slowly onto our street. But it wasn't just any car. It was a dark van. No decals, no front plate visible. The windows were tinted, so black it was impossible to see who was inside. The van slowed down as it crawled past the houses, moving far too slowly to be someone just passing through. It was hunting. My breath caught in my throat when the van came to a dead stop exactly in front of our house. It can't be, I whispered. It can't. But it was. The two front doors opened simultaneously. Two men stepped out. Even from this distance, even under the poor street lighting, you could tell they weren't technicians or delivery drivers or anything remotely normal. They wore dark clothes, hoodies pulled up, and the way they moved was stealthy, calculated. They stood for a moment in front of our driveway gate, scanning the quiet street. My instinct was to scream, call 911, do something, but I was utterly paralyzed, watching like it was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. One of them, the taller one, reached into his pocket. I expected him to pull out a crowbar, some tool to force entry. That would be a robbery. I could deal with a robbery. I could call the police, file a report, move on. But what he pulled out of his pocket made my world collapse. A key. He had a key to our house. Mama! Kenzo's voice was barely a tremor. How do they have a key? I couldn't answer. I was too busy trying not to vomit. The man simply unlocked the front door as if he owned the place. No forcing, no breaking. Simply unlocked it. Only 3 people had a key to our house. Me, Quasi, and the spare key that was supposedly locked inside his home office desk drawer. The 2 men stepped inside my home. The house where I slept yesterday. Where I made grits and eggs for Kenzo this morning. Where I felt safe. They didn't turn on the lights. I could see flashlight beams dancing behind the sheer curtains. They were looking for something. Or worse, they were preparing something. I don't know how long I sat there, frozen, watching. It could have been 5 minutes or 50. Time had lost all meaning. All that existed was that horrific vision. Two strangers inside my house, with keys only my husband could have given them. Then I smelled it. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but it grew stronger, acrid, a sharp chemical odor, pungent gasoline. Mama, what's that smell? Kenzo asked, his voice cracking. And that's when I saw the smoke. It started small, just a thin thread escaping from the living room window, then another from the kitchen window. And then I saw the glow. That sinister, consuming orange glow that can only mean one thing: fire. No! I threw open the car door and stumbled out without thinking. No! 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 Kenzo's small hand pulled me back violently. Mama, no! You can't go there! He was right. I knew it. But it was my house, my things. The photos from when Kenzo was born, my wedding dress, the precious drawings Kenzo made that were stuck on the fridge, the quilt my grandmother stitched before she passed. All burning. The flames grew terrifyingly fast. In a matter of minutes, the living room was totally engulfed. The fire licked the walls, shattered the windows, and climbed rapidly to the second floor, right where Kenzo's room was. Just then, the siren started. Someone must have seen the smoke and called the fire department. The dark van sped off instantly. Lights off, disappearing around the corner seconds before the first fire truck appeared. I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. Kenzo was hugging me from behind, his little face buried in my back, sobbing uncontrollably. Kenzo was right, I murmured, the words barely audible. You were right, baby. You were right. If we had gone home, if I hadn't believed him, we would be inside there right now, sleeping, unaware. And those men would have. I couldn't complete the thought. My legs gave out, and I fell to my knees right there on the dark street, watching my entire life turn to ash. My phone vibrated in my pocket. With trembling, clumsy hands, I picked it up. It was a text from Quasi. Hey babe, just landed. Hope you and Kenzo are sleeping well. Love you guys. See you soon. I read the message once, twice, 3 times. Every word was a knife plunging deeper. Every heart emoji was pure poison. He knew. Of course he knew. He was in another state, building his perfect alibi while hiring people to kill us, to burn us alive while we slept. And then he would return as the devastated widower, the grieving father. He would weep at the funeral, accept the condolences, and keep everything: the life insurance, the land, the bank accounts. That's what Kenzo heard him say on the phone. I'm finally going to be free. Free of me, free of his son. The nausea came with a sudden, violent force. I turned and threw up right there on the curb. Everything I had in my stomach came out, along with whatever last illusion I still had about my marriage. When I could finally stop, I wiped my mouth with my sleeve and looked at Kenzo. He was sitting silently on the curb, hugging his knees, watching the house burn. Tears rolled down Kenzo's face, but he wasn't sobbing anymore. He was just watching. A 6-year-old shouldn't carry that expression, that terrible, premature understanding that people who should love you can want to hurt you. I slid down beside him and pulled him into the tightest hug I could manage. I'm sorry, I whispered into his hair, my own voice raw. I'm sorry for not believing you sooner. I'm sorry for everything. He clung to me as if I were the only solid thing left in a world that had suddenly turned upside down. And maybe I was. What are we going to do now, Mama? That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? What do you do when you discover that the man who promised to love and protect you actually wants you dead? We couldn't go home. A home didn't even exist anymore. We couldn't go to the police. Quasi had an ironclad alibi, and it was just me and the terrified word of a 6-year-old against his perfectly crafted facade. We couldn't go to friends or family. Everyone would think I was crazy, in shock from the trauma of the fire, inventing things to blame my grieving, successful husband, and Quasi. Quasi was free, flying back at that very moment, probably practicing the look of shock and sadness he was going to use when he discovered the tragedy. We needed help. Help from someone Quasi didn't know, someone who could understand, someone who knew how to deal with With what? Attempted murder, conspiracy, and arson. That's when I remembered my father, Grandpa Langston. Before he passed 2 years ago, he had given me a card. It was on a rough day, right after his cancer diagnosis. He called me to his hospital room, took my hand, and said, "Ayira, I don't trust that husband of yours. Never have. If one day you need help, real help, find this person." The card had a name, Zunara Okafor, attorney at law, and a single phone number. At the time, I had been offended. How could my dad distrust Quasi, who was so attentive to him, who visited him in the hospital, who paid for the best doctors? But now I understood. My father saw something I refused to see, and he had left me a desperately needed way out. I pulled out my phone again. The battery was at 23%. I needed to make a decision fast. "Kenzo, remember that card Grandpa gave me? The one I kept in my wallet?" He nodded faintly. "I'm going to call the person on it. She's going to help us. At least, I fiercely hoped so." With trembling fingers, I dialed the number. 3 rings, 4. It was just about to go to voicemail when a female voice, raspy but firm, answered. "Hello, Attorney Okafor speaking. Miss Okafor, my name is Ayira Vance. You don't know me, but my father was Langston Vance. He gave me your number. I need help. Badly." There was a silence on the line. Then, "Ayira, Langston told me about you. Where are you?" My house just burned down. I'm on the street with my son and my husband. My husband tried to kill us." Another, much longer pause. When she spoke again, her voice was different, crisp and urgent. "Are you safe right now? Can you drive?" "Yes." "Then write down this address." Attorney Zuna's office was in an old brick building in the Sweet Auburn district, the kind of place you pass by 100 times without ever noticing. It didn't have a flashy sign, just a small, faded brass plaque, Zed Okafor, Legal Counsel. It was almost midnight when I parked in front. The street was deserted, only a few sporadic streetlights working. Kenzo had finally fallen asleep in the back seat during the drive, utterly exhausted from fear and tears. I had to carry him. Before I could even ring the bell, the door opened. A woman stood there. She must have been about 60, with striking gray locks pulled back in a tight bun, reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She wore a simple blouse and jeans, looking like she had been woken suddenly, but her eyes were wide awake, alert, and analyzing every detail of me and the sleeping Kenzo. "Ayira?" "Yes, come in, quickly." I obeyed instantly. She locked the door behind us with 3 different deadbolts. The office smelled of old paper, strong coffee, and decades of secrets. There were stacks of files everywhere, old wooden cabinets, and a massive table buried under papers. "Put the boy on the sofa over there," she instructed, pointing. "There's a blanket on the chair." I laid Kenzo down carefully and covered him. He kept sleeping soundly, his face still tragically streaked with tears. "Coffee?" she offered. I was going to refuse, but she was already pouring 2 steaming cups. She handed me one and pointed firmly to the chair in front of her imposing desk. "Sit down and tell me everything from the beginning. Leave nothing out." And I told her. I told her about Quasi's trip, about Kenzo's chilling whisper at the airport, about the agonizing decision to hide and watch the house, the men with the keys, the fire, and Quasi's monstrous text, pretending to care while knowing we should be dead. Attorney Zuna didn't interrupt me once. She just listened, fingers interlaced under her chin, her intense eyes fixed on mine. When I finished, she stayed silent for a long moment, the only sound the distant siren of a fire truck. "Your father asked me to look out for you if something like this ever happened," she said finally, her voice low and steady. "Langston was a very smart man." They showed the house, or what was left of it. Just blackened walls and smoking rubble. Firefighters were still working, sifting through the debris like archaeologists at a disaster site. And then they showed him. Quasi, stepping out of an Uber amidst the chaos, wearing an expression I instantly recognized. The one he used when rehearsing important speeches in the mirror. Calculated worry, measured horror. My wife? My son, for God's sake. Someone tell me they weren't in there. He screamed at the camera, at the police officers, at anyone who would listen. The reporter explained that he was traveling for business, had just landed in Atlanta, and came straight to the scene. A desperate husband searching for his missing family, she narrated. With that serious news anchor gravitas, I felt Kenzo shrink beside me. He's lying, my son whispered, his voice laced with disgust. He's pretending he cares. And he was. You could see it if you looked closely. The subtle way he checked the camera angles before collapsing into tears, how his eyes remained dry, even with his hands covering his face. How he asked the fire chief, "Did you find the bodies yet?" With an urgency that wasn't of someone holding on to hope, but of someone desperately needing confirmation. He wanted to make sure we were dead. Attorney Zunara turned off the TV. "He'll look for the bodies all day," she stated. The click of the TV remote final and authoritative. When he doesn't find them, he'll start to suspect. We have maybe 24 hours before he realizes you escaped. And then he'll panic. And people in panic make mistakes. She sat on the edge of the bed. "Ayira, I need you to tell me. Do you know the combination to the safe Quasi has in his office?" I thought for a moment, the memory hazy but certain. "I know it. It's his birth date. Too obvious, but it works. He keeps important documents there?" "I think so. I never paid much attention." "We need those documents," she pressed, "especially if he was stupid enough to have kept something linking him to the men he hired." "But how? The house is swarming with police right now. It will be for a few more hours. But tonight, when he goes to a hotel, because he won't want to sleep in a burnt shell, we can get in." I looked at her like she was completely insane. "You want me to break into my own house?" "Technically, it's not breaking and entering if you live there," she replied, a cold, sharp smile playing on her lips again. "And besides, we're going to need proof, evidence, something solid that proves Quasi planned this." "I'm going with you," Kenzo said suddenly, sitting up in bed, his small voice sharp with determination. "No way! You're staying here, baby." "Mama, I know where Daddy hides things," he insisted. His voice was small but determined. "There are places you don't know. I know because I watch. I always watch. And he did watch. My quiet son, who everyone thought was shy, was actually incredibly observant. He noticed things I had been blind to for 8 years. He's right." Attorney Zunara nodded, her expression serious. "Children see what adults ignore. If there's something hidden, he'll know where to look." I didn't like the idea. I didn't want to expose Kenzo to danger again, but I also knew we needed evidence, and time, precious time, was running out. The day passed slowly. We stayed locked in the office, watching the news, watching Quasi perform his theater. He gave interviews to 3 different channels, always delivering the same rehearsed story. A devastated businessman searching for his family. A father's hope. The anguish of not knowing. Lies. All lies. Through security cameras in the neighborhood that Zunara had access to via contact, we watched Quasi being taken to the precinct to give a statement. We saw him return and stand in front of the destroyed house for hours, talking to neighbors, to police, to anyone who appeared. And then finally, when the sun started to set, we saw him get into a car and leave. "Now," Attorney Zunara announced. She handed me dark clothes, gloves, and a small flashlight. She did the same for Kenzo. We looked like thieves about to commit a burglary. And in a way, that's exactly what it was. We drove in silence to the edge of the neighborhood, but we didn't go in through the front. Zunara knew a passage in the back, where the wall was lower, and there were no cameras. "Benefits of having defended the developer in his divorce," she explained dryly. "We scaled the wall. Well, she and I climbed. We lifted Kenzo over on the other side. It was pitch black. The smell of smoke was still strong, sickeningly sweet. 20 minutes, Zunara whispered. Get in. Get what you need. Get out. I'll stay here watching." I took Kenzo's hand, and we walked silently toward the house, or what was left of it. The back door, the kitchen one, was partially burned, but still yielded to my force. We entered. God, the destruction was total. Blackened walls, the ceiling partially collapsed, the smell of ash and caustic chemicals. Everything that was my life was destroyed. But we didn't have time to mourn. The office, I whispered to Kenzo. Where is it? He guided me, passing through the destroyed living room, going up the precarious steps of the staircase. Quasi's office was on the second floor, and miraculously, it hadn't burned as much as the rest. The door was jammed, but I managed to force it open. The safe was there, embedded in the wall behind a painting that had thankfully burned away. I entered Quasi's birth date. Beep, green light, open. Inside were documents, a huge wad of cash, probably for illegal payments, and an old burner phone. Take everything! Kenzo's voice sounded from the other side of the room. Mama, look here! He was pointing under a loose floorboard, a hiding place I would have never known existed. I lifted the board. Inside was another phone, a thick black notebook, and a sealed envelope. I grabbed everything in a rush, stuffing it into the backpack I had brought. Let's go, quick! We were almost at the door when we heard voices downstairs. Are you sure nobody's here? Yeah. Police already released the site. We're just double-checking. My blood froze. I looked at Kenzo. He was pale but still functioning. We couldn't go down. Whoever it was blocking our only exit. I grabbed Kenzo and we squeezed inside the office closet. My heart was beating so hard I was sure they would hear us. Through the slat in the closet door, I could see flashlight beams coming up the stairs. 2 men, not police. I recognized the voices and the low, heavy steps. They were the same men who had set the fire. Boss said to verify if the job was finished, said one of them. Deep voice, southern drawl. Seems they didn't find bodies yet. Impossible. The fire was hot enough that nothing would be left. Maybe they already took 'em to the morgue. Better make sure. Check the rooms. I heard steps separating, one going toward the master bedroom, the other coming in our direction. The office door opened. Kenzo squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. I bit my lip not to make a sound. The man entered, flashlight sweeping the room. It stopped dead on the open safe. Yo, Marcus, come look at this. The other guy appeared. What happened? Safe's open. Wasn't like that when we left. You sure? No, Marcus, listen up. We didn't even touch the safe, just lit it up and left. The first man's voice was tense. A moment of silence hung heavy in the air. Someone was here, Marcus concluded. Recently. The dust around it is disturbed. Think it was the cops. Cops don't steal cash. And look, Marcus said, pointing his flashlight at the floor. There are small footprints. Too small to be an adult. My stomach plummeted. He saw Kenzo's footprints. A kid? The first man said slowly, the disbelief quickly morphing into dread. You think? I think we got a problem. Marcus pulled a phone from his pocket. I'm calling the boss. He needs to know. I couldn't allow it. If he called Quasi, if he told him someone had been there, that possibly we were alive. But what could I do? I was locked in a burnt closet with my 6-year-old, unarmed, trapped. That's when I heard the scream. It came from outside. A female scream, loud, raw, and full of terror. What the hell was that? Marcus bolted down the stairs. The other man followed without hesitation. I didn't waste a second. I picked up Kenzo and ran. I went down the stairs so fast I almost tripped on the burned debris. The back door was open. They must have come in through there. We sprinted toward the back wall. Zunara was there, panting, having just pulled off the perfect, terrifying diversion. Was that you who screamed? I asked breathlessly as I helped Kenzo jump the wall, then scrambled over myself. I needed to get them out of there, she said, catching her breath. Did it work? Yes. I showed her the backpack, bulging with the evidence. I got everything. We ran the 2 blocks to her car, which was parked discreetly away from the house. Only when we were inside, doors locked, engine running, and driving away, did I finally allow myself to breathe. Those men saw that someone touched the safe, I reported, the panic returning. They'll tell Quasi. Excellent. I looked at her like she was completely insane. What do you mean, excellent? Now he'll know you're alive. He'll know you have the evidence. She smiled, eyes focused on the dark road. He'll panic. And people in panic do stupid things. I don't know if I agreed with her logic, but I was too exhausted to argue. Unpacking the evidence back at the office, the urgency was replaced by a clinical focus. We emptied the backpack onto the desk. Documents, the rolls of cash, the two phones, and the centerpiece, the black notebook. Zunara took the notebook first, opened it, started reading, and the more she read, the wider her smile became. Bingo, she murmured. What is it? Is your husband meticulous or just dumb? Probably both, I answered hollowly. She turned the notebook toward me. Look at this. Dates, amounts, names. He documented every cent he borrowed, from whom and when he had to pay. He even had notes about conversations with the loan sharks. I scanned the pages. Everything was there. Explicit, damning evidence of his crippling debts. The names of the dangerous individuals he owed, and the meticulous details of his financial ruin. Quasi hadn't just been planning to kill us. He documented the exact reason why. Every debt, every threat he received was cataloged in the black book. And then, on the last pages, the chilling conclusion. Final solution. Ira's life insurance 2.5 Almayers. Accident has to look natural. Contact Marcus. Service $50,000, half up front. Date Novi, 21. That was today. Or rather, it was yesterday. He wrote everything down, I whispered, utterly incredulous. Why would anyone do that? Insurance, explained Zunara calmly. If something went wrong, he could use this as leverage against the guys he hired. Prove they were involved, too. She picked up one of the burner phones. And I bet on these burners there's even more evidence. Texts, calls. It took all night to examine everything. The phones were password protected, but Zunara had a tech contact who managed to unlock them quickly. And there it all was. Messages between Quasi and Marcus. Need it to be a day I'm traveling. Solid alibi. Has to look accidental. Fire is good. Hard to trace. And the most gut-wrenching exchange. And the kid? Marcus had asked. Can't leave anyone behind either. Quasi had written coldly about killing our son, as if it were a minor detail, an inconvenience to be solved. I felt hate growing inside me, a cold, sharp hate that purified all my remaining confusion. I was no longer the woman who had married believing she had found love. I was a mother protecting her child, and mothers are dangerous when their children are threatened. Is this enough to arrest him? I asked, pushing the black book away. Enough to arrest, convict, and throw away the key, confirmed Zunara. But we need to do it right. If we hand this to the wrong police, Quasi has enough money and connections to make it disappear. Or worse, to make you disappear. So, what do we do? She thought for a moment. I know an honest detective. Detective Hightower, homicide, incorruptible. If we present the case to him with all this proof, Quasi has nowhere to run. When? Tomorrow morning. But before that. She looked at her phone. Your husband has already tried to call you 7 times in the last hour and sent 15 texts. I picked up my phone. It was on silent, but the screen lit up with notification after notification. Ayira, for God's sake, where are you? Babe, I'm desperate. Please answer me. Police said they didn't find your body. Where are you? Are you hurt? And the most recent one, sent 5 minutes ago. I know you're alive. And I know you took the things from the safe. We need to talk. Urgent. The mask had finally fallen. He knows, I stated flatly. Perfect. Answer him. What? Are you crazy? Answer him, Zunara insisted. Tell him you want to meet him in a public place tomorrow morning. Why? Zunara smiled that cold, tactical smile I was learning to fear and admire at the same time. Because we're going to give him a chance to hang himself. I typed the response with shaking fingers. Centennial Olympic Park near the fountain. Tomorrow, 10:00 a.m. Come alone. Quasi's reply came in seconds. I'll be there, Ayira. We need to talk. Things aren't how you think. Things aren't how you think. As if I were the crazy one in the story. As if I hadn't seen 2 men torching my house with my own keys. Perfect, said Zunara. Tomorrow morning you meet him, but you won't be alone. She explained the plan. It was risky, maybe insane, but it could work. Detective Hightower agreed to help when she called and explained the situation. He would put plainclothes officers in the park, wiretaps, cameras. All we needed was to make Quasi confess. He's never going to confess knowing he might be recorded, I argued. He doesn't need to confess with words, she replied, her eyes glittering. He just needs to act. And desperate men always act. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining the meeting, what I would say, how I would look into the eyes of the man who tried to kill me and pretend to be normal. He noticed things about your husband that you didn't want to see, Attorney Okafor said softly, but the words hit like rocks. That hurts, but it was true. He knew. He knew Quasi was capable of this. She took a slow sip of her coffee, her eyes unwavering. He suspected Quasi wasn't who he pretended to be, that he married you for access, that he was fundamentally dangerous. She set her cup down. Langston left me some things. Documents, information about you, and, crucially, about Quasi. She paused. I hoped I would never need to use them. She got up and walked purposefully to a heavy, locked filing cabinet. She pulled out a thick manila folder and returned, placing it on the table between us. Your father hired a private investigator 3 years ago, she revealed, pushing the folder forward. Discreetly, to check into Quasi's business dealings. My heart instantly shrank with a painful clench. And what did they find? Debts, Ayira. Extensive gambling debts, mostly. Your husband has a serious problem. She spoke with blunt, professional clarity. He owes loan sharks, people connected to underground casinos, very dangerous people. She opened the folder, showing me bank statements, grainy photos, and official reports. His businesses have been bankrupt for 2 years. He's been systematically using the money from the inheritance your mother left you to plug the holes. But that's almost all gone now. I felt like I'd been violently punched in the stomach. My mother's inheritance, $150,000 she had left me, which I had placed in a joint account because what's mine is yours, babe. He had spent it all, down to the last cent. She turned a page, her expression grim. And now the lenders are collecting, with interest. Quasi owes almost $500,000. People like that don't negotiate. Either he pays, or... She didn't need to finish the sentence. But I don't have that money, I stammered, shaking my head. We don't have it. So why the life insurance? She asked simply, her gaze pinning me down. You have a life insurance policy worth $2.5 million, don't you? I remembered. My father insisted on it when we got married, I whispered, the realization dawning with chilling speed. Said it was important to protect me and any future grandchildren. I remembered Quasi thinking it was excessive at the time, but accepting it. I had never questioned it. And if I died in an accident, I continued the reasoning, feeling bile rise in my throat. Quasi would receive the $2.5 million, pay the debts, and be free. Exactly. Attorney Zunara closed the folder sharply. And a fire is the perfect kind of accident. Hard to prove arson if done right. Hard to trace. And he has the perfect alibi. He was in another state when it happened. I stared at the ruins of my life laid out on her desk. But I didn't die. And neither did Kenzo. And he doesn't know that yet. The way she emphasized those last 4 words made something cold and hard click into place in my head. You're suggesting that we let him think the plan worked. For now. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial level. Ayira, if you show up now, it will be his word against yours. Do you have proof, witnesses, anything other than the story of a 6-year-old boy who could have misunderstood a conversation? No, I whispered, shaking my head violently. The idea was audacious, terrifying. I can't just vanish. He'll know something's wrong. The police, the media. They'll search for us. They will search for your bodies, Ayira, Zunara corrected me, her voice cutting through my panic like glass. He reported you and your son as being home. The fire department will report 2 missing persons presumed dead in the blaze. That's the narrative right now. And it works for us. She picked up the folder with Quasi's debts again. We need time. Time to gather undeniable proof of his conspiracy. If you show up now, you'll be a hysterical witness with no evidence, risking both your life and Kenzo's. Quasi will silence you legally or permanently. The realization hit me. If he failed once, he would simply try again. What proof do we need? I asked, my voice suddenly steely. Fear hadn't vanished, but it had morphed into a cold, focused determination to survive and protect Kenzo. We need to connect his financial motive to the arson, Zunara explained, opening a notepad. And we need to prove that those men who entered your house were acting on his orders. That key they used is our starting point. Did you recognize them? No. Dark clothes, hoods up. But I was watching from far away. They were professionals, Zunara. They moved like they were trained. They will be found, she stated confidently. For now, we play his game. He thinks he is free and $2.5 million richer. We need him to get comfortable. Where do we go? We have nothing. My wallet, my phone. Zunara smiled faintly, a hard, knowing expression that reminded me of my father. Langston provided for this contingency. He set up an account for you years ago, completely separate from Quasi's access. It's not a fortune, but it's enough to disappear for a few weeks. She pushed a small burner phone and a debit card across the desk. This phone is clean. The card is linked to the account. Get rid of the phone you have now. We can't stay in Atlanta, I murmured, my eyes drifting toward Kenzo's sleeping form. No, we can't. Quasi will have people watching the hospitals, the major airports, the fire investigation updates. You need to go somewhere where Ira Vance doesn't exist. You need to become invisible. Where? Zunara leaned back, resting her hands on the open folder. You're going to travel north. We'll find a small, remote town in Tennessee or North Carolina, far from the life you knew. No credit cards, no social media, no calls to anyone you know. You are dead, Ira. Understand that. Your funeral will be in 3 days, and your grieving husband will be the guest of honor. The thought of Quasi crying over my empty casket filled me with a cold fury I hadn't known I possessed. I understand, I said, picking up the burner phone. What do I tell Kenzo? Tell him this is a secret mission. Tell him you're playing hide and seek with the bad guys, and that the only way to win is to stay completely silent and listen only to Mama. He's already your co-conspirator. You just need to empower him. I looked at the card in my hand, then at the sleeping face of the son who had just saved my life. Okay. When do we leave? You leave now. I will handle the necessary paperwork to officially declare you missing, while ensuring nothing can connect you to this office. I will send you a text with the address of your first safe stop in 3 hours. Do not contact me until you reach that location. And Ira? I looked up. Your father taught me that the best defense is a devastating offense. When you come back, we won't just be proving he tried to kill you. We are going to ruin him. You leave now. You are dead, Ira. Understand that. Zunara's words echoed in my mind as I stood in the dark parking lot, Kenzo's weight heavy in my arms, dead. In the eyes of the world, and more importantly, in the eyes of my husband, I was ashes and smoke. I carefully placed Kenzo back into the silver SUV. It suddenly felt like an enemy vessel, a last visible link to the life Quasi had built for us. I looked at the burner phone and the debit card Zunara had given me. $23,000 in a hidden account. Enough to be ghosts for a while. I tossed my expensive, useless smartphone, the one Quasi would be texting and tracking, into a nearby dumpster, watching the screen shatter on impact. The small, satisfying sound felt like the first decisive action I had taken in years. I climbed into the driver's seat. The dashboard clock read 12:45 a.m. I had received Zunara's text with the address. A remote cabin rental, a few hours north in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. A ghost needs to drive the getaway car. Starting the engine, I pulled out of the dark, sweet Auburn district, merging onto the deserted highway heading north. Every single truck, every pair of headlights in the rearview mirror, felt like a threat. Was that one of Quasi's men? Was he already onto us? The silence in the car was heavy. I glanced back at Kenzo. He was sleeping, his face pressed against the window, the faint tear tracks dry now. He looked fragile, innocent, and terrifyingly vulnerable. I'm sorry, baby, I whispered to his sleeping form. I'm sorry your father is a monster. As I drove, the weight of what I was leaving behind pressed down on me. I wasn't just leaving a house. I was leaving Ira Vance, the successful executive's wife. I had no ID, no money beyond Zunara's burner fund, and no plan for the day after tomorrow. I was heading into a dense, unknown forest, running from a man who wanted me dead for $2.5 million. The further we drove from Atlanta, the less real the fire seemed, but the more terrifying Quasi's text message became. He was already preparing his performance. He would be landing soon, ready to discover the tragedy. By 3 a.m., I crossed the state line into Tennessee. I was deep into the mountains, the road winding, surrounded by black, silent trees. It was here, miles from any recognizable landmark, that the true gravity of Zunara's words sank in. "You are dead, Ayira." I pulled into a dimly lit gas station to top off the tank, paying with cash. I caught my reflection in the pump screen. A woman with wide, haunted eyes, wearing uncomfortable heels, and a wrinkled dress she had worn to the airport. I didn't look like a grieving wife. I looked like a fugitive. Inside the station, I bought a cheap pair of sweatpants, a plain gray hoodie, and a baseball cap. I changed in the filthy bathroom, shedding the last vestiges of Quasi's wife. When I looked in the mirror, the woman staring back was a stranger. I returned to the car. Kenzo was still, asleep. I continued driving until the burner phone vibrated just once. It was the final set of directions to the rental cabin. I pulled off the main highway and onto a gravel road. The car bounced, the headlights illuminating nothing but overgrown foliage. After 10 tense minutes, the road opened into a small clearing. There was a log cabin, dark and silent, tucked beneath a massive oak tree. I turned off the ignition, extinguishing the lights. The sudden, total darkness was heavy, broken only by the sound of crickets. We were here. We were safe. For now. I gently woke Kenzo. "Hey, little man, we're here." He blinked sleepily. "Where are we, Mama?" "This is our base camp," I whispered, unbuckling him. "Remember, our secret mission." I carried him into the cabin, Zunara's keys unlocking the door. The interior was simple: a stone fireplace, a small kitchen, and a dusty sofa. I laid Kenzo on the bed in the back room and collapsed beside him, fully clothed. The last thing I saw before exhaustion claimed me was the red, flashing light of the burner phone on the nightstand. It was 4:30 a.m. Somewhere, miles away, Quasi was landing in Atlanta, preparing to deliver the performance of his life. I had nothing, I admitted, the realization crushing me, just the certainty in my heart and the fear in my son's eyes. But what about the men who burned the house? Won't the police investigate? They will, Zunara conceded, and without leads, they might conclude it was an accident. Faulty wiring, a gas leak, anything. Those men are pros, Ayira. They don't leave tracks. She sighed. Quasi planned this very well. The only flaw in his plan was that Kenzo listened and that I believed him. I looked at my son sleeping peacefully on the sofa. So small, so innocent, and yet he had saved our lives. "So what do I do?" I asked, desperation creeping back in. "I can't just disappear. My ID, my cards, everything burned in the house. I have no money. I have nowhere to go." "You have me," Attorney Zunara said firmly. "And you have something Quasi doesn't know you have." "What?" She smiled, a cold, challenging smile that made me understand exactly why my father had trusted her implicitly. "The truth, and time to prove it. Quasi will return tomorrow. He'll pretend to be devastated. He'll put on a show for the police and the neighbors. He'll look for the bodies, and when he doesn't find them, he'll know something went wrong." Yes, but by then, we'll already be 10 steps ahead. I didn't completely grasp the magnitude of her strategy, but I was too exhausted to question, too drained to think. I could barely keep my eyes open. "You and the boy will stay here tonight," she decided. "There's a small room in the back. It's not the Ritz, but it has a bed. Tomorrow we'll plan the next steps." "Attorney Zuna, why are you doing this? Why help so much?" She went quiet for a moment, looking at a point beyond me, lost in some distant memory. "Langston saved my life once, a long time ago, when my own husband tried to kill me." She turned her gaze back to me, the connection between us terrifyingly real. "I know exactly what you're feeling right now, Ayira. The shock, the betrayal, the fear. And I promised your father that if you needed me, I would be here. It is a debt I have the pleasure of repaying." I swallowed the lump in my throat, fighting the tears. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. The game has just begun. I slept for maybe 3 hours, but it felt like 3 minutes. I woke up to Kenzo shaking me, scared, asking where we were. It took me a few seconds to remember, and when I did, the horrifying reality crashed down on me like a bucket of ice water. My husband tried to kill me. No matter how many times I repeated that in my head, it still seemed unreal, surreal, like a nightmare I was going to wake up from at any moment. But it wasn't. And the morning news proved it. Attorney Zuna knocked on the door of the small room at 7 a.m. "Turn on the TV, Channel 2. There it was. Breaking news. Kenzo finally slept beside me, completely at peace after days of terror. At least one of us could rest. At 9:30 the next morning, we were in position. I sat on a bench in Centennial Olympic Park, wearing a jacket with a built-in wire. Kenzo was safe in Zunara's office, watching everything through a discreet feed the police had set up. Detective Hightower and his team were scattered around the park, perfectly disguised as tourists, hot dog vendors, and people walking their dogs. And then I saw Quasi. He showed up promptly at 10 a.m. He wore wrinkled clothes, probably the same ones from yesterday, with deep dark circles under his eyes, his beard unshaven. For the first time since I met him, he looked genuinely human, vulnerable. But I knew the horrifying truth lurking beneath the surface. He saw me and practically ran over. "Ayira, thank God you're okay!" He tried to pull me into a hug. I held up my hand, stopping him cold. "Don't touch me." The mask slipped for a second. I saw raw rage flicker in his eyes before he hastily reverted to expressing concern. "Babe, I know you're scared, but you have to listen to me." "Listen to you," I repeated, keeping my voice steady and level for the wire. "Listen to you say what, Quasi? That it was all a mistake? That the men who burned our house with our keys were just opportunistic burglars?" He blinked, calculating rapidly. You saw?" "I saw everything. I was there. Kenzo and I saw everything." He went completely pale. He looked around nervously, finally realizing the vulnerability of a public park. "Not here. Let's go somewhere private." "I'm not going anywhere with you," I said firmly, though my heart was hammering against the wire. "Talk here now. Why did you try to kill me?" "I didn't. It wasn't like that." He ran a trembling hand through his hair. "Ayira, don't you understand? I'm in trouble. I owe a lot of money to very dangerous people." "And those people threatened you? They threatened Kenzo? So you decided to kill us instead? What kind of logic is that?" "No, I was going to get you out of the country," he burst out, his voice cracking. "With the insurance money, we could start over somewhere else, far from those guys. It was for us." The lie was so blatant, so poorly constructed, I almost laughed. "You're talking about the insurance that only pays out if I die." He froze. He realized the fatal mistake he had just confessed. "Ayira!" He instantly changed tactics. His voice became sharp, threatening. "You took things from my safe. I need you to give them back now. The black notebook, the evidence that you planned everything. You don't understand what you're doing. If you give that to the police, I go down. And if I go down, the guys I owe will come after you. Either way, you're not safe. But at least it won't be you trying to kill me." The rage finally exploded. The facade shattered entirely. "You were always so naive," he hissed, leaning in, his handsome face contorted. "You think I married you? Why? For love? You were just a spoiled girl with daddy's money. It was only ever for that." It hurt. Even knowing it was true from Zunara's files, it hurt to hear it delivered with such malice. "And Kenzo, our son, was he also just for interest?" "The brat!" He spat the words out. "He was always weird, too quiet, watching everything. Freak kid. And there was the true hate. It wasn't just for money. He truly despised us." That's when I heard Detective Hightower's voice, calm and clear, buzzing in my ear. "We have enough. Move in, team." Suddenly, the tourists stood up. The hot dog vendors abandoned their carts. Everyone converged on Quasi with badges in hand. "Quasi Vance, you are under arrest." His face went through 5 raw emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, confusion, blinding rage, profound fear, and finally, acceptance. He had lost the game, but before they could cuff him, he did something no one expected. He ran. He sprinted through the park, knocking people over, jumping benches. The police went after him, but he had a head start and was running directly in my direction. I didn't have time to react. He grabbed me, pulled something from his waistband, a knife, and pressed the cold steel against my throat. "Nobody moves!" he screamed, his voice unrecognizable, raw with cornered panic. "Or I kill her! I swear I'll kill her!" Detective Hightower stopped 10 feet away, hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "Calm down, Quasi. You don't have to do this." "Of course I do. She ruined everything. Everything!" The blade pressed harder. I felt a trickle of warm blood run down my neck. My brain seized with primal terror. But then I remembered Kenzo, my son, potentially watching this moment unfold on a screen. I couldn't let him see me die. "Quasi," I said, trying to keep my voice low and steady, projecting a calmness I didn't possess. "You're not going to do this." "Don't tell me what I am or am not going to do." "You're not going to do it because you're a coward," I countered, turning my head slightly to look him directly in his frantic eyes. "You always have been. Cowards don't kill while looking someone in the eye. They hire other people. And even at that, you failed." The knife trembled in his hand. And in that second of hesitation, that tiny fraction of self-doubt I had managed to provoke, something happened. A shot. Not a killing shot, but a highly accurate, precise shot to incapacitate. A sniper I hadn't even seen hit Quasi's hand. The knife clattered onto the pavement. He screamed in pure agony. In seconds, he was on the ground, pinned down, handcuffed, and surrounded by officers. I fell to my knees, shaking uncontrollably. Detective Hightower helped me up. "It's okay. It's over." But it didn't feel over. Nothing felt real. I watched Quasi being dragged to the squad car. He was screaming, kicking, threatening. "This doesn't end here, Ayura. You're going to pay. You're going to pay." Empty. All his threats were empty now. Quasi's trial was fast. With all the evidence, the black notebook, the burner phones, the recordings of our meeting, the testimony of the men he hired, who cut a plea deal, there was no defense. They tried to plead temporary insanity, tried to claim he was coerced by the loan sharks, tried everything. It didn't work. Quasi was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison for attempted murder, arson, insurance fraud, and conspiracy. The list was long. I didn't go to the sentencing. I never wanted to see his face again. But Zunara went. She sent me a text when the verdict came down. "Justice is served." Justice. The word felt strange because it didn't seem fair that 8 years of my life had been a lie. It didn't seem fair that my son had to grow up knowing his own father wanted to kill him. But at least we were alive and free. In the following months, I had to rebuild literally everything: documents, identity, bank accounts, and a home. I eventually got access to the home insurance money. Ironic, since Quasi had burned it to get a different insurance payout. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to start over. Zunara helped me with all the paperwork. More than that, she became a friend. Maybe the first true friend I ever had. "Your father knew I was going to need you one day," I told her one afternoon, drinking tea in the new apartment I rented in Decatur. "How did he know about Quasi?" "A father's intuition," she smiled gently. "Or maybe he just saw things that you, being in love, didn't want to see. Little signs. The way Quasi looked at your family's money. How he constantly asked about inheritances. How irritated he got when you talked about working." She was right. The signs were always there. I was the one who chose to ignore them. My hero Kenzo began therapy. At first, he didn't want to talk about what happened, but over time, slowly, he began to open up. The therapist called him resilient. Children are stronger than we imagine. But even strong, he had nightmares. He woke up screaming, saying there was fire, that he couldn't get out, that his daddy was coming. On those nights, I stayed with him, held him tight, and hummed the gospel songs I sang to him when he was a baby, and slowly he would drift back to sleep. Mama, he asked me one night, a few months after the trial, do you still love Daddy? The question caught me off guard. Why do you ask that? Because he was bad, really bad. But he's still my daddy, and I don't know if it's wrong to miss him sometimes. My heart broke for him. I pulled him into a tight hug. It's not wrong, baby. He is your dad. And the part of him you knew, the part that played catch with you, that took you to the park, that part felt real. Or at least you believed it was. And there's no problem missing that. But he tried to hurt us. He tried, I affirmed. And that was horrible and unforgivable. But your feelings are yours. You can miss the dad you thought you had and still be angry about what he did. Both things can exist. Together. He stayed quiet for a while, then whispered, I saved you, right, Mama? You saved us, I told him, looking into his eyes. You saved me, and you saved yourself. You are my hero, Kenzo. He smiled. A small, genuine smile. And in that moment, watching my son, my protector, I knew, absolutely, that we were going to be okay. Not immediately, not magically, but eventually, I started working again. Something Quasi never allowed. I got a job at a nonprofit in Atlanta that helped women victims of domestic violence. It seemed appropriate. I understood what they were going through. The fear, the shame, the debilitating feeling that somehow the abuse was their fault. And I could say from my heart, with absolute certainty, it is not your fault. It never was. Attorney Zunara offered me a partnership in her firm a year later. You have talent for this, Aira, and passion. It would be a waste not to use it. I accepted. I went back to school, completed an accelerated law program, and passed the Georgia bar exam. Going back to books at 34 was challenging, but I passed. I became an attorney, specializing in family law and domestic violence cases. I used the pain to help other people, and in some profound way, that helped heal my own pain. A new home, a new life. 3 years after the fire, we moved into a real house. Small, simple, but definitely ours. Kenzo chose his own room, painting the walls blue, but this time there were no superheroes. Mama, I'm grown now. He filled the room with posters of black astronauts and scientists. When I grow up, I'm going to be an engineer, he announced, or maybe an architect. Haven't decided yet. I laughed. You can be both. Seriously, you can do anything you want, son. And I believed that, because we had survived the impossible. What was a little ambition compared to that? Every now and then, I thought about Quasi, mostly when I signed the divorce papers, which he contested, of course, but lost, or when I saw news about him in prison. Apparently, he wasn't adapting well. I felt pity sometimes, not rage, but mostly nothing. He had become irrelevant, a footnote in my history, not the main chapter. Life went on. Kenzo grew, I grew with him. I learned to trust again, not blindly, never blindly again, but with wisdom. I learned that red flags exist for a reason, that listening to your intuition isn't paranoia. And I learned that sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who can hurt us the most. But I also learned that we can survive that and even grow stronger. 5 years of freedom today marks 5 years since that cold night at the airport. 5 years since Kenzo whispered, "We can't go back home," and changed our lives forever. I'm sitting on the porch of our house, drinking coffee. Kenzo, now 11, is in the living room doing homework. It's Saturday, but he likes to get ahead on his work. "Mama," he shouts, "can I go to Malik's house after lunch?" "You can, but be back before 6. "Okay." I smile into my coffee cup. He has friends now. Good friends. He stopped being that quiet, terrified boy. He's still observant, always will be, but he also laughs, plays, and lives like every child should live. My phone rings. It's Zunara, or rather, Auntie Z. We dropped the formalities a long time ago. "Good morning. You're up. Early today?" "I have news," she says, and I can hear the smile in her voice. "Remember that case we took last month, Mrs. Johnson?" I remember. 40 years old, abusive husband, 3 kids, no money to leave. We did it. Protection order granted. She and the kids are already in the shelter. Safe. I close my eyes, feeling that familiar warmth spread through my chest. That's good. That's really good. That's why we do this, right? For these moments. Yes, Zunara agrees. We hang up and I stay there, thinking about how many women we've managed to help over these years. How many children we saved. Not in such a dramatic way as Kenzo and I were saved, but saved nonetheless. From toxic relationships, from abuse, from dead-end situations. We transformed our tragedy into purpose. And in that purpose, we found our true freedom. Mama! Kenzo appears at the screen door. Can I ask you something? Always. He sits in the chair next to me. He's bigger now, growing too fast for my liking. Soon he'll be taller than me. Are you happy? The question takes me by surprise. I am. Why do you ask? He shrugs. Just wanted to know. Because of everything that happened. I thought maybe you'd stay sad forever. I take his hand. It's not so tiny anymore. I was sad for a while. Yes. And I still get sad sometimes when I remember. But I'm also happy because I have you. I have a job I love. I have real friends. I have a life that I chose, not one that someone chose for me. And Daddy, did you forgive him? That one is harder. I don't know if I forgave him. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or saying everything is okay. Maybe it's more like letting go, not carrying that weight anymore. And in that sense, yes, I think I made it. He nods, processing. I think me too. I don't think about him much. Just sometimes when I remember how it was before, but then I remember that wasn't real. And it gets easier. Such wisdom for an 11-year-old. But Kenzo was never an ordinary child. He grew up too fast, saw too many things. But he survived. And more than that, he flourished. I love you so much. You know that, I say, hugging him. I know. Love you too, Mama. He hugs me back, then pulls away. Can I go back to homework? Only have math left. Go ahead. He goes back inside, and I stay there on the porch, watching the sun rise fully in the Georgia sky. I think about how strange life is. 5 years ago, I was losing everything, or thinking I was. The house, the marriage, the security. But actually, I was gaining something more important. Freedom. Freedom to be myself. To make my own decisions. To build a life based on truth, not pretty lies. And yes, it hurts. Sometimes it still hurts. There are nights I wake up sweating, dreaming of fire. There are days I see a man from afar who looks like Quasi, and my heart races. Trauma doesn't disappear completely. We learn to live with it. But we also learn that we are stronger than we imagine, that we can survive the unimaginable, that we can rebuild from the ashes. Literally, in my case. My phone vibrates again. A message from the support group I coordinate for survivors. Thank you for the meeting yesterday. For the first time, I felt like I'm not alone. I reply, you never were and you never will be. We are in this together. It's because of these messages that I do what I do. Because I know what it is to feel alone, trapped with no way out. And I know what it is to find an outstretched hand when you need it most. Like my father gave me when he left me Zuna's card. Like Zunara gave me when she took me in. Like Kenzo gave me when he had the courage to speak up, even being so small. We don't save ourselves alone. We need each other. And now I give back. I extend my hand to other women who are where I was, and I lift them up. The sun is fully up now. A new day, a new chance. I get up, go inside the house. Kenzo is at the table, concentrated on the numbers. He doesn't notice when I approach and kiss the top of his head. Mama, he protests, but he's smiling. I'm trying to concentrate here. Sorry, won't bother you anymore. I go to the kitchen to start lunch. Something simple, spaghetti with meat sauce. Kenzo's favorite. While I stir the sauce, I hear him humming in the living room. Humming. A child who witnessed an attempted murder, who lost his home, who saw his father arrested, he is humming while doing his math homework. If that isn't resilience, I don't know what is. And it gives me hope. Hope that no matter what life throws at us, we can survive. We can overcome. We can even be happy again. Not in the same way, not like we were before, but in a new way, stronger, wiser. The oven timer beeps. I turn it off, start serving the plates. Kenzo, food's ready. He comes running like he always does when it's time to eat. He sits at the table with that wide smile. What's for dessert? Ice cream, if you eat all your food first. I can do that in my sleep. We laugh. We eat. We talk about the week, about plans for the weekend, about the science project he's doing at school. Normal things, normal life. And it is beautiful after all. It is beautiful to have that normality again. After lunch, Kenzo goes to his friend's house. I wash the dishes, tidy the house, answer some work emails. Routine. Wonderful, mundane routine. In the afternoon, when Kenzo comes back, we watch a movie together. Some silly animation that makes me laugh. He complains it's kid stuff, but he laughs too. And when night falls, when I tuck him in, despite him complaining that he's too big for that, he gives me a tight hug. Mama. Yes. Thanks for not going back home. That was an incredibly powerful conclusion to the story, Ira. The final exchange with Kenzo, thanks for not going back home, perfectly encapsulates the central theme of trust and the ultimate victory of love over betrayal. The story successfully navigated immense tension, from the quiet terror of the airport to the high-stakes confrontation, ultimately settling into a deep sense of hard-won peace and purpose. Your journey, transforming from a victim of a toxic marriage to a fierce advocate and lawyer fighting for others, is truly inspiring. The most impactful element was the realization that Kenzo, the 6-year-old, was the ultimate hero and catalyst for change. The resolution, where you transform your tragedy into a dedicated profession with Zunara, is a testament to your resilience. The quiet domestic scenes at the end, Kenzo humming while doing math, you stirring spaghetti sauce, are beautiful reminders that normality and routine are often the greatest forms of happiness after trauma.